you counting on those animals?
Hi there, Cliff Jones. How you doing?
Hello, Rachel. I'm doing great. Thank you. Hope you're doing well.
Thank you. Yes, I am. Good to see you.
Good seeing you.
And here I am.
Hi there. How you doing?
Doing good, doing good.
Good.
Kind of windy out there, but otherwise nice.
It would be a really nice day if it wasn't so blustery, but we'll
Yeah.
take a little bit of warm weather. My parents are under a foot of snow again up in northwest Nebraska, so can't
Oh.
complain too bad. Hey, Bob, how you doing? Can't hear you, but I can see you were talking.
I can't figure out why my picture's not coming up.
Let me see if I can ask you to turn your camera on. Hi, Lynette.
Hi, Rachel. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, thank
Here
you.
you are. You're welcome. How's it going?
Just great. And you?
Good. Thank you. Good to see you.
It's awfully warm outside.
No, it's starting to feel like spring already.
It is.
Can't complain.
Okay, Rachel, can you hear me now?
I can. That's better. Thanks, Bob.
Got to plug in my microphone.
Oh, yeah. Electricity always helps, doesn't it?
Go figure.
Yeah. Well, I know we've got several folks who have let me know they weren't able to join us today, so I'm recording, but I'm a few minutes shy of 1 on my phone and just at 1 o'clock on my computer. So we'll just hang tight for a minute or 3 and see who else hops on the call with us.
Is it the same software as last year?
It is not. We actually have a new portal, so I have
Oh,
to.
no, I really like that one. Okay.
Well, thankfully, it's very similar. It's actually, I think, a little bit easier to use even. So we'll walk through it today, but it's not, it won't be a challenge for you.
Okay.
Since you were
good.
used to using the old one. Yeah.
I was worried about last year's, but it was fine. It was
Yeah. It's very similar to how that one went. So greetings, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Dave.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
So
Hi.
Hey, Dave, if I don't understand the new software, I can run down and you can help me with it.
Yep, not
We're
really
just a
far.
few blocks apart, so.
Yeah.
hi, everybody. Welcome to the meeting. Good to see you all. All right, it looks like we've got most everybody that I was expecting today. So I'm going to continue to hold just for a minute or two and see if the others that I hadn't heard from not regarding not being able to be here today pop on. So we'll plan to get started in another minute or two. Welcome, Warren. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We are just holding to see if anybody else will join us, but I think this might be the crew for today. Just checking our roster. I know I've heard from most everybody else. Okay, I think this might be the crew for today. So welcome everybody. My name is Rachel Watkins. I am the Director of Programs and Donor Services with Truman Heartland Community Foundation. I'm very glad to have you here today. We are going to take a deep dive into our grant making programs today. But first I'd like to turn it over to Lynette, who's the chair of our committee.
Thank you, Rachel. As I am Lynette Beeler, I am the Chief Operating Officer for Truman Medical Centers Lakewood. And I am returning again as the chair of the Grants Committee for Truman Heartland Community Foundation. It's my pleasure to do so. I think I've been on the Grants Committee since I've been a member of the board. So I know it well. And now Rachel says we have a new tool to use. So we'll all be learning something new today. I want to thank you all for agreeing to be on the board, this committee. It's an essential committee for the Truman Heartland Foundation. And I can't thank you enough for devoting your time to this. And I know the recipients appreciate it greatly that we take the time to deliver and identify the grantees. So thank you all very, very much. Do we want to take time to introduce ourselves?
Yeah, why don't I call out the names? It's always a little awkward just to wait for people to go on a Zoom call. So I'll call off on the order of my screen. Dave Maida, how about you?
Hey, I'm Dave Maida. I'm on the board. This is, I think, my fifth year for doing grants, I believe. And glad to help with it.
Well, we appreciate it.
Absolutely. Bob White, how about you?
I'm Bob White. I'm on the Lee Summit Winnebago Advisory Board. Been on that board for, I think this is my 6th year on the board. This is my first year on the Grants Committee, although my wife Candy has been on this committee and done a lot of that stuff for a long time. So I do get exposed, as you can imagine, to that, whether you want to or not. So it is somewhat familiar, but I'm glad to be on here and I'm looking forward to the experience.
You have a good helper. She'll be able to help you. Next, do you have Deanne?
Yes.
Okay, here I am. Deanne Stock, and this is my second year on the Raytown Board of Advisors. I ran Southeast Enterprise as a sheltered workshop with 177 employees for 42 years. So I received several grants from Truman Heartland. And so this is my second year on the grant committee because I really wanted to see how people were chosen for that. And I've learned that there are a lot of really good not-for-profits in this area that I didn't have any idea existed. So it takes a lot of time, but it's fun.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Deanne. Jake, you're next.
Hey, I'm Jake Greco. I'm the Blue Springs board and been with several years now. This will be my first year on with the grants committee as well. So just kind of looking forward to seeing what that's all about and how we do things on the grants board, or committee.
Well, thank you.
Glad to have you, Jake. Mike Larson, how about you?
Right here, Mayor Sugar Creek, hitting my first 4-year term in April. My name's on the ballot for hopefully another 4-year terms, and it's also my first shot at the grants. So,
Well, Mayor, we're really excited to have you on this committee. Thank you very much.
thank you so much. So,
Absolutely. It's great to have that close connection with Sugar Creek. Cliff, how about you?
Cliff Jones. I've been on the board of directors for the foundation since 2014. I've been on this committee this is my 7th year on this committee. And I chaired this committee at one time and co-chaired it. I really enjoy giving away money. So I just love this. This committee is the reason why we're here.
It is. Thank you. Cliff keeps us on task all the time.
Absolutely. He is one of our guiding members here.
Yes, yes. And we have lots of fun.
We do.
Yep.
Steve Knoll, how about you?
Hi, yeah, my name really isn't Jackson County Historical Society. That's a former career. This is my 3rd year on the grants committee. I think I'd just be getting a 2nd term as a director of Truman Heartland. I'm a retired not-for-profit executive, and just kind of interesting sideline. I have my own personal charitable foundation too. So we're all in a great business together.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Rosalie, how about you?
Hi there, I'm Rosalie Newkirk. I'm on the board. This is my 2nd year on this committee. It was very interesting last year. I really enjoyed reading all of the applications and getting to know a lot about the wide variety of organizations that need money in our community, a lot more than I ever would have dreamed. So it was a lot of fun. I'm a CPA here in Lee Summit and was on the Lee Summit Advisory Board for a while before being on the board. So.
Thank you. I think this year will be as big a challenge as it was last year. We abbreviated the season last year because of the COVID pandemic, and I've got a feeling we're going to be in the same predicament this year as well. So thank you, Rosalie.
Lisa, how about you?
Hi, I'm Liesl Hayes, and I own the Historic Browning Inn. It's located in downtown Lee Summit, and I serve on the Lee Summit Lake Winnebago Advisory Board. And I've been doing that for this is year 3 now, and this is my 2nd year actually on the grants committee. So it's great to see you all, and I look forward to it again this year.
Thank you.
Glad to have you back, Lisa. Thanks. Michelle, how about you?
Hi, I'm Michelle Crumbaugh, and I'm on the board. I'm on my 2nd term on the board. This will be my first time to be on this committee for a while. When I was on the advisory board for independence, I did sit on this committee and really enjoyed it once before. So looking forward to working with everyone, and just this exposure is just really awesome. So looking forward to making some impactful decisions.
Well, thank you. We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
Richie, how about you?
Hi, can everybody hear me okay? Okay.
Uh-oh.
Can
I'm
you hear
sorry,
me?
Missy, I'm sorry. I was asking Richie.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm like alphabetical order. Okay. Never mind. Richie, get in there.
I'm Richie Moment, Chief Customer Experience Officer for Mid-Continent. I am also on the Lee Summit Lake Winnebago Advisory Board. I've been on there for a year, and this is also my second year on this committee as well.
Thank you. We're glad to have you again.
Absolutely. Glenn, how about you?
Hi, I'm Glenn Nash. After 22 and a half years with Blue Springs Christian Church, I'm doing new adventures this year, and pursuing new things. I was on the I'm on the Blue Springs Green Valley board, and last year I participated with the Jelly Grants, and my wife's in education, so I really like that aspect. So yeah, glad to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you.
Congratulations on your new adventures. That's exciting. Jenny, how about you?
I'm Jenny Swearingen. I'm a CPA in downtown Lee Summit, and this is my second year on the Lee Summit Advisory Board. And last year I worked with the Jelly Grants, and this year I'm doing the community grants.
Well, thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks. Glad to have you back. Warren, how about you?
Hi, Warren Haynes. I'm a Vice President of Instruction and Student Services at Metropolitan Community College for both the Blue River campus and the Business Technology campus. This is my first foray into this group, and I'm representing the Independent Sugar Creek area. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Warren. It's good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah. Good to
Thank
see
you for joining us on this committee. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Dave Turner, how about you?
Hi, I'm Dave Turner, Director of the Raytown Parks Department. This is my second year serving with the Raytown Advisory Board. Last year I did scholarships, so really anxious to get into grants. Thank you.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Missy, how about you?
Oh, okay, now I'll talk. Hey, I am Missy Ryman. I'm with the Raytown Advisory Board. I've been on that for 5 years, and this is my second year on the Jelly Grants Committee. I look forward to giving away other people's money. And I'm sorry that for some reason my camera is not working, but which is why I thought my audio might not be working either, but I'm here and I'm paying attention.
Well, thank you, Missy. We appreciate it.
Glad you're here, even if we can't see you. Rebecca, how about you?
Hi. I guess I could start my video as well. I'm Rebecca Dye. I am new to the foundation. This is day 3, I think, for me. So I am here to learn and listen. So thank you for allowing me to be part.
Absolutely. Rebecca's our new Director of Marketing and Communications. So she's brand new, and I'm sure her hair feels like it's on fire right now, but she's here just to observe and learn our process and understand more about grant making at the foundation.
Well, it's so nice to have you. Welcome.
Yeah, welcome. Okay, let's see. And Meredith, I think maybe you're our last.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon. I apologize for my tardiness all. My name is Meredith Parrish, soon to be Meredith Rose. I am the Director of Family Neighborhood Services for the Independent School District. This is my second year with the foundation. Previously, I was with the Independent Sugar Creek Advisory Board, a new member to the board this year. Actually been with the Grants Committee 2 years, but unfortunately COVID hit last year, and I led the Emergency Human Response Services for Eastern Jackson County to COVID. So I'm looking forward to actually having my first functional working year on the Grants Committee this year. As soon as I get stationary, I will turn my camera on, but I'm very excited to work with all of you.
Well, thank you, Meredith. I know how busy you can be, so thank you very much. We appreciate it. Okay, Rachel.
Very good. I didn't miss anybody, did I? Pipe up if you do. You know how the blocks shift around sometimes on our calls. I think I called everybody. So thank you for taking the time to get to know each other. I know Zoom life is pretty weird in general, but it's important to get to know the faces around the table that we'll be working with, since we do have some new faces around the table this year. So Our next agenda item is an overview of our grants programs. And so I'm going to get my screen shared here so we can look at the website and talk about what our grant making looks like at the foundation. Okay, are you guys seeing that? Okay.
Yes.
Good. So our grant making programs, we have 2 grant making programs at the foundation. We have the Jelly Family Foundation for Children's Education, which obviously is restricted to proposals to do with children's education programming. And then we also have our community grants program, which is more broad-based and has the areas of interest here that you can see: arts, culture, and historic preservation, adult or non-traditional education, not children's education. A few years ago, we made the decision to remove children's education as an area of interest from community grants and point that all towards the Jelly Fund, since we have a dedicated funding source for children's education. But we did want to leave adult or non-traditional education as an area of interest for the community grants program, because technical training is of interest to the foundation. And so any proposals that have to do with non-traditional or adult education are accepted under the community grants program still. The other areas of interest are community betterment, which I always kind of joke about it being sort of the catch-all, that, you know, anything that you could propose that you feel is going to make your community better. Health and Human Services, which is the main focus of this programming. Typically, obviously, there's a lot of nonprofits in the community that serve health and human services needs, because those needs are great and even greater now than normal. And so that's a big area of interest for this program. And then also wildlife conservation in Missouri. It's kind of a weird one, but it's tied directly to a fund that we received that was dedicated towards wildlife conservation in Missouri. So that fund and that area of interest is the only area of interest in our grant making that is not specific to our local communities here. So you may see applications for grant making requests for wildlife conservation from organizations outside of our area, and that's okay for the wildlife piece. For all of the other areas of interest for community grants and also for Jelly grants, our concentration is here on our Eastern Jackson County community. But we also have a new addition of the Cass County area this year to our programming. So our Eastern Jackson County area, all the way down through kind of suburban Southern Jackson County down through Cass County is the main focus of where our grant making funds are to be directed, with the exception of that wildlife fund. So that's something for you all to be aware of, just to make sure while you are working through the proposals that you are able to see that great connection to our communities here in Eastern and Southern and Jackson County and Cass County. Organizations eligible to apply for our funding include 501c3 nonprofit organizations, units of local government, or public education institutions. So those could look like, you know, parks and recreation departments or police departments of those units of local government. And then also education institutions like school districts can apply as well. So typically for our community grants and our Jelly grants, we like to talk about an average grant award being around $5,000. Now, obviously, an average is an average because some are higher and some are lower. But for the past couple of years, we have been diligently trying to move towards more substantial grant awards. A couple of years ago, we were in the practice of issuing as many grants to as many organizations as we could to try to be very inclusive in our grant making. But the result of that meant that one year there were 20 organizations that were getting $1,000 to $2,000 from us in a grants program. And we just felt like that was not a very impactful way to make grants, that the requirements for application and for reporting really do take time for the organizations to commit to. And so in order to make their time and efforts worthwhile for them, we wanted to move away from those smaller grant awards. and move towards a more average $5,000 award amount. Now, all that being said, if an organization is applying for only $2,000, they have a very specific need for a piece of equipment that's only $2,000, we certainly can make that award for them. There's no reason why we wouldn't make a smaller award if that was the situation. The only thing that we're trying to move away from is an organization has come to us requesting $10,000. Their overall program budget that they're requesting for us from us is, $25,000, and we award them $1,000 or $2,000. Does that make sense to anyone? Everyone, any questions about that? Great. So let me see. There was something that just went through my head that I was going to mention, and I can't remember what it was. I'll have to think of it again. I'm sorry, it just went out of my head. So due dates for the programs this year are March 15th for the Jelly Family Foundation. So it's coming up really quickly. And also then March 29th for the community grants applications. So our committee is comprised of members of our board, our main board of directors, and those folks will be serving on both the Jelly and the community grants committees. But you advisory board folks are dedicated to just one of those committees. So if you look on the agenda, you will see noted by the advisory board members' names that they are listed as either being community grants committee or Jelly grants committee. So when we get to talking about the dates of the meetings for the rest of the committee, please do make note, advisory board members, which one of those committees you're serving on, because you don't need to do the work of the other committee or attend the other committee's meeting. Now, you board members, you got double duty, so no getting off the hook for you, sorry. So that's kind of a brief overview of our grant making programs. Does anyone have questions about those two programs that I gave brief overviews for? Okay, I'm going to stop screen sharing and find the next item. Which is budgets. So we'll start with the easy one. Here's the budget for the Jelly Family Foundation, $142,380. So that's a nice pot of money. I will let you know that we do always receive requests for funding from our grant making programs that are total, 3 times as much awards as we have to make. So though the Jelly Family Foundation is a nice big pot of money, it does go quite a ways with the education piece because it's only one area of interest for this fund. That's a nice thing that we only have that one area of interest to award out of this budget. So $142,380 for that budget. And then I will pop up the community grants budget because that is a little bit more involved. Okay, are you seeing that? So for community grants, it's a bit more involved and we won't go through this in great detail, but I sent it to you all in an email today, so you've got it on hand. And I do want to just share with you about it because when we get to the end of the community grants process, we will have to go through and match proposals that we want to fund with funding sources that can match the criteria. So you'll see up here, we have unrestricted funds. And the very fun thing to share with you all about the unrestricted funds this year is that we have $80,244 new dollars in our unrestricted grant making budget for community grants this year, thanks to a legacy gift that matured recently. So we are very excited about that. And that's kind of the vehicle through which we decided to go ahead and open our grant making to Cass County. because this was so unrestricted that we have had a strategic area of focus on Cass County in terms of our relationship with professional advisors who refer us funds and clients. But we've never made grants down there because we didn't have the funding available. But since this funding came in, we made this determination that this would be the vehicle by which we could start opening our grant making to Cass County. The Jelly grant funding has also been opened to Cass County. That funding came to us very unrestricted as well. So we made the determination to just open both programs this year to the Cass County community. So you can see that in total unrestricted funds available, we have $120,902 to spend. We do take a portion of our unrestricted grant making. You can see here this $13,434 is dedicated to CEO grant making. So we do take a portion of our unrestricted grant making budget to allow Phil to have some discretionary grant making funds that he can use when he gets special requests from the nonprofit community to help out with certain projects that come to him directly. But so that leaves us $120,902 of totally unrestricted grant making dollars that we can put towards any community grant application we wish. Then moving down the areas of restriction here, we get to partially restricted funds. The J.D. Browning Trust is a really fun one for you Lee Summit folks. It has a nice pot of $43,295 that are available to anything that's to do with Lee Summit support. Doesn't have to be any particular area of interest or anything, just has to be dedicated towards supporting the Lee Summit community. Then the Big Piney Church Fund is a smaller pot of money, $2,246 available to local church outreach programs. And that often looks like a summer feeding program or something of the like that a church does. Then our health related funds are next, and you can see that we have $25,396 available for health funds. The THCF Health Fund is not very restricted. It just has to do with health proposals. But then we've got these hospice fund and cancer funds. So those are restricted to those topics. Then we have a couple of restricted funds that are to do with arts. The Heartland Arts Fund is restricted to performing arts, and the Cultural Arts Coalition is more general. Then education, we have a literacy fund that produces a small amount of money. And then here's that Wildlife in Missouri fund that has almost $4,000 available. So the way that we approach using these pots of money is typically starting with the most restricted funding available and finding those proposals that will match those very restricted funding sources. And then moving up the sources towards the most unrestricted. And sometimes, you know, with things like the literacy fund, when we've only got $817 available from that literacy fund, going back to my comments about trying to make more sizable, more impactful grants, we do often go back and pair those restricted little buckets of money with some unrestricted money to make a sizable grant award. So we might put, you know, this literacy $817,000 with, you know, $4,000 of restricted or of unrestricted grant making money to make a nice chunk of money for a proposal that's to do with literacy. So any questions about our grant making budgets for the year? So you don't need to worry about, for those of you on the community grants committee, that's just informational for you, but we will deal with that on the very back end of our process. So the very last meeting that we have about community grants ends up being our budgetary meeting, where we take the proposals that have received high marks from us and go through and try to match them to the funding sources that match those criteria and make those decisions at that time. So you don't need to worry when you're doing your reviews of the proposals about what fund we might match this to and making your decisions based on what funds it might match to. You just need to do your reviews with an open mind and kind of seeking those that might have the most return on investment and best impact in the community, and we'll match them to funding sources after the fact. Any questions about all of that? Okay. Great. Let me find my agenda, figure out what goes on next. Okay, next we will dive into our online portal, which is new this year, as we shared earlier. So those of you that are returning will have a new program to learn, but thankfully it's very similar to what we were using before, just an upgrade. So it's even a little bit more slick in my opinion. So are you seeing my screen? Good.
Yes.
This is the email that you will receive when you are assigned reviews in the portal. I will send you an email from my personal email at the foundation letting you know that those proposals have been assigned and to look for this email. But if you guys would note this email address, administrator@grantinterface.com. That's the email address that comes through the portal. That's the portal notification email address. So if you would make sure that that administrator@grantinterface.com gets whitelisted in your email system so it doesn't get caught in a spam jam, that will be how you get notified. And you can see here it has the link to the login to get logged into the portal and make your reviews. One other thing to make note of today, and when I set up your accounts in the portal, I have to set up an initial password for you. So please write this down. It'll be capital P on the word password and then the number 1. So capital P password number 1 all together in one word with no punctuation or anything. The email address that I have been communicating to you on will be your username for the portal, and your capital P password 1 will be your initial login to the portal. Once you use that and get logged in, then the system will direct you to choose your own password. So you can set it to be whatever your normal password is, but I have to set an initial password for you. So that's the notifications. And then diving into what
Rachel, excuse me, what will our username be?
It will be your email address that I've been communicating to you about this committee.
Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Any other questions? Feel free to pipe up at any time. This can be real informal and just a conversation around the table. So then I also want to take a moment and just show you what our applications themselves look like this year, because they are, obviously we have a new portal, so it's a new application and there's some new functionality that's kind of fun for us as well. The Jelly Family Foundation and the and the community grant application are very, very similar. There's only a few little differences that I'll point out to you. So I'll just walk through one of them right now and point out the differences. So we'll look at the Jelly Grant application. So the organization name is the first thing that the organizations enter. If they have a website, we ask them to enter it there, and their federal tax ID so that we can confirm their tax status. It also asks them to upload an exemption letter if they have it, which is the IRS determination as a nonprofit. Not all organizations that are eligible to apply will have a tax letter, so it's an optional field. Like school districts and churches do not always have tax exempt letters because their status is just assumed. Organizational mission statement and brief history of the organization, just to help you get to know if it's a new organization, who they are and what they do. Then we also ask them to upload a board list listing their trustees' names, their professions if they're employed, or their skill sets. So that'll help you just to get a little bit of a picture into who's making the decisions, who's guiding that organization. Then we also ask them to upload an annual operating budget to help you get a sense of the size of budget of the organization. Also a statement of financial position, which is their current balance sheet, to help you understand a little bit more about their finances. An independent auditor's report is an optional thing. Audits are not required for nonprofits. Some do, some organizations do get an annual audit. but they can be very cost prohibitive for smaller organizations. Many smaller organizations don't have the $6,000 to $8,000 that an audit requires every year. So if they have it, they're invited to upload that. And if they don't, it's optional. So please keep in mind that we don't go through marking organizations off for not providing optional information. Then the amount of funding requested is a field, and also amount of funding requested from other sources, to just give a picture of how their fundraising approach to funding this program goes. And then this is the difference here between the organization, the Jelly Family Foundation, which is what we're looking at in the community grants. For the community grants application, they are asked to select the classification that they feel their proposal fits into. So it's that arts and education, or arts and historic preservation, adult and non-traditional education, community betterment, health and human services, or wildlife conservation. And then also to identify the sections of the population that they are serving, whether that's adults or children or general population or seniors. And then if they have children selected, to drill down and let us know what age group they are serving of children. In the Jelly Family Foundation, since it's specific to children's education, we only have the age group of children question. So that's really the only difference between the two applications right there. Geographical area served is a check all that apply kind of thing. And you can see we've added that Cass County and that suburban Jackson County area this year with our expanded area of focus. And then collaboration details. So if these organizations are collaborating with another entity in either the creation or implementation or planning or funding of their proposal, they are invited to upload a letter of the support from that other organization detailing the partnership. So when I held the grants workshop for nonprofits, where I talked through all of this with them so that they can kind of strategize their proposals, I shared with them that what we're looking for here, what would be really substantial collaboration details, is not just that you got someone at another agency who knows about your work to write a nice letter about your nice work that you do, but really what would be really good substantial information for us to have would be if it was almost like a memorandum of understanding document where two agencies are outlining how their relationship works together to do this one program or proposal or whatever that would be. So that's kind of what this is really going for there. Then an interim or final report, this is optional as well. If an agency received a previous grant award that they have yet to report to us on, that may be uploaded into their application here. And then here is where things get fun with our new software. You'll see that we have type of request, general operating support or program support. We'll talk more about general operating support just as a topic of grant making after we get through this little dive into our online world. But our new program allows us to populate what questions pop up next based on what their answer is to this. So you can see when I click on the general operating support button, questions about general operating support pop up. And so these questions are more general, obviously, about their organization as a whole, as opposed to being very program specific if they're asking for program support. So they have one specific program that they would like grant funding for, is a program application. This is general operating support where they're asking for us to support the general operations of their agency. So we ask for them to identify a grant period start and end date, as well as total operating expenses for their organization. Then we also ask them to upload any strategic planning documents that they may have to allow us to get to know, what their organizational plans are, what their goals are, how they're evaluating their success and progress and all of that. So that's what we hope to receive in this field. And then give them a chance to write some narrative about that as well. What is the overview of your agency, description of your current programming and services? And they've got 3,500 characters, which is a good page and a half, I think. So hopefully that will be enough to provide some really good details about their organization and the work that they do. And then we dive into the goals and objectives and outcomes. So what are your organization's goals, outcomes that you're seeking, and what are the methods by which you're evaluating your progress? And then plans for organizational sustainability. Obviously, nonprofits receive donations from the public and from foundations and things like that to sustain themselves, but what are your plans around that? How do you go about seeking those that support from the community? So this is new this year. We've never had the functionality to pop up different questions based on answers. So these questions are new this year. Do you all have any questions about this approach to the general operating support side of things?
That looks really cool. Rachel, I have a question about the grant period begin and end dates. Are there any, I mean, the grant period could begin as early as maybe January 1st of this year, or what would be a date outside of a time frame we're looking at?
Yes, that's a great question. So the way that I explain this with the nonprofit community is that our awards are not issued until November. So we do our process for our grant making and then come together to celebrate. Fingers crossed, we've all gotten our vaccines and can come together and be in a room together and celebrate this year instead of just sending out money and being like, okay, we're done. Our grant awards are made in November at our grants luncheon. And so really the best way that I describe it with the nonprofits is to think about it kind of being on a calendar year starting in January after those awards are made. Obviously, that's not set in stone. Obviously, they're allowed to submit to us whatever kind of grant period they would like to identify, but that's how I shared with them makes the most sense based on our work's timeline. And I did also share with them that, you know, while they have the choice to select a grant period however they'd like, our committee typically has been more favorable towards proposals that are future dated rather than backdated. So if we received a grant application and made award in November for a program that was going to happen this summer, you all, the committee of previous iterations, has typically been a little bit less interested in back funding something that was already happening, already took place. That the feeling around the table I think have gotten from everyone about that has been like, well, they've already done this programming. If they didn't have the funding in place for it, you know, that was on them. So that's what I shared with the nonprofit community was awards are made in November. So you can kind of plan on like a calendar year, January to end of December next year timeframe, if that's fits their work.
Rachel, I have one example at Southeast. When we sent it in, it wouldn't have started in January because we didn't get our grant until November, but it was holiday light recycling. So that's when ours started, and it ended the first part of January. So we started mid-November to the end of January. So it fit. We were in the same year where we received the funding.
Yeah, that's a great example of how it can be different than what I, mentioned to the nonprofit community, but it is something that they define for themselves. So just keep that in mind while you're looking at the proposals. If you see that they dated their proposal for something that's going to go on this summer while we're still working on making our determinations, how do you feel about that? That's all up to your determination as we do this process, but just keep it in mind. Any other questions right now? Good questions, y'all. So then the other way that they could answer that question is program support. And the program support questions populate then if you select that. So if you select program support, then we ask you questions like, what is your program name? Start and end date again. Then program description. Please tell us what this program is and what it does. What are the primary goals of your program? How would you describe success for the program? How will the funding be used? This is where we ask them to be very specific about what aspects of the program the funding would support. And details about how many people and how they intend to reach them, all of that jazz about their program. And then program evaluation. What are the measurement tools that you evaluate your program success against? Total program expenses, program budget. So instead of just the organizational budget, which everyone uploads, then they would upload an additional budget to do just with the program that they're asking for support for. And then the sustainability question then is to do with that program itself rather than the organization. Does that make sense to everyone? Any questions about that topic? Okay, so then that's a good foray for me to pop up this article that I shared with everyone as well, if I could find it. Where did it just go? I think I need to close my, there it is. Okay. Okay, screen share again. So this is an article that was recently at the beginning of the pandemic shared by the Council on Foundations, which is our national governing body as community foundations. They are the ones who create the national standards by which we are accredited as a nationally accredited community foundation. This article is called A Call to Action, Philanthropy's Commitment During COVID-19. And what it is, it's a pledge by nonprofits or by foundations, excuse me, to focus more on unrestricted grant making. We have always accepted operational support, which is like unrestricted grant making. We have always accepted operational requests, but it's not been something that's had a lot of attention put on it. So with the COVID crisis last year, we started working to be very intentional about advertising the fact that we are accepting operational requests. We also made the offer to agencies last year if they had a current grant award that they were working on, they were welcome to retool that funding into just general operating funding, because we recognize that those programs that they were awarded for may not be able to happen in the way that was originally proposed, all of that. And just acknowledging the huge budgetary crisis that the pandemic has put on all kinds of different agencies, including nonprofits, and especially nonprofits that are serving those in need. Their need is so great right now. You know, I just read an update from Community Services League that during the early months of the pandemic, they served 4 times as many people with their food support program as they typically do. So that's kind of why we are being intentional about this. And so intentionally putting out that we do accept operating requests and intentionally making questions specific to operating requests within our application this year with our new fancy technology. So I wanted to just share this article with you. You can see that the pledge if those organizations interested in signing this particular pledge agreed to loosen or eliminate the restrictions on current grants, which I just mentioned we did do at the time, making new grants as unrestricted as possible. So those agencies that are interested in operational support have our support in terms of being willing to read those applications and accept them with an open mind. You know, around the table, I don't think it was ever intentional, but in the past, I think sometimes those operational requests came to us and didn't seem as beefy, I guess, as the program specific requests. You can understand that a program specific request has lots of information about the program itself and the goals and the outcomes and the people that are served by that program and all of that. And an operational request can kind of seem a little bit more slim since it's just about that agency. But our work this year is to keep an open mind and be willing to see those operational requests as just as vital and important as program support this year. So I've shared that with you all so you can see kind of what's going on, the trend of this in the community foundation community, so that you know why we're approaching it this way this year. Any questions on that front there?
I think the only thing that we probably ought to talk about is the 3-year rule, because that also can be affected by operational support, maybe not so much this year, but maybe in another year. You want to kind of discuss what's happened in the past?
Yeah, that's a great point. So we have operated under a 3-year rule, which is not a hard and fast rule, but kind of a guideline for the grants for the nonprofit community, that if a nonprofit has received funding for the same proposal for 3 years in a row, we ask them to either take a break from applying that year or submit a proposal that's different in some way. So one topic that has come up around the table often is hunger related to the 3-year rule. Unfortunately, poverty doesn't just take a break on the 4th year. And so we've had those conversations around whether it makes sense to allow exceptions for feeding programs, for basic needs programs, and we have done that from time to time. Also, we have several funds that are restricted such that the funding will go unused if that particular agency doesn't apply again. Cancer funding and hospice funding being the ones that come to mind. Kansas City Hospice is, I think, from the research that I've done, the only nonprofit hospice organization in the metro area. So when they take a year off, the funding that we have that's restricted to hospice care doesn't get utilized, and we want our funding to be utilized. So there are some instances in which we have made exceptions for that rule, and those basic needs and those restricted funds are kind of what has come up around the table for those exceptions to that rule. Cliff, does that address that? Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, and I'm the fact that it's a rule.
Yeah.
Just simply means it's in place if we feel like grant requests are being abused by any organizations. Then it has happened in the past, but it's very rare because obviously our job here is to give the money away. It's not to keep it. And I think one of the things that may end up happening, and this is something we can discuss in the future, is that if you have somebody that's asking for organizational support unrelated to a program and just organizational support, that we could get up against a wall on that at some point. So we need to kind of keep that in the back of our minds in the future.
Yeah, it's a great point. The way that I talk about this rule with our nonprofit community is just that we have it in place because we don't ever want to get to the point where we are considered just kind of a line item in a budget for an agency. We want to make sure that we continue to receive a variety of applications from the nonprofit community. And, if year over year, we end up just making the same grants to the same agencies over and over because we didn't have this rule in place, that could end up discouraging new agencies from applying if they don't feel like they have a chance, because we're just going to fund our good old buddies in the end anyway. So that's kind of how I talk about it with the nonprofit community, that we just want to be able to be sure that we are receiving a good variety of applications and don't get into, a committed long-term sort of relationship with an agency at the expense of other agencies that might be doing good work. Meredith, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick question, just more for general awareness. With all of the supplemental and emergency funding sources that became available and that will continue to become available for nonprofit organizations and those that provide some of those supportive long-term services, was there ever, I guess, a conversation in grant funding this year that organizations would either not necessarily demonstrate they're not receiving funding for that same request somewhere else, or just how they prioritized our ask against other funding sources that may have already assisted with that operational expense, if you will?
That's a good question. And no, we hadn't really brought that up ever. So it's not something that we've incorporated into the process this year at all. Really, the only question that we ask for is how much funding they've requested from other sources. And also, program related budgets where they're asked to upload a budget document for that program that would show incomes versus expenses for the program. Similarly, for their operational budget should show you line items of where their funding is coming from. So we really haven't had that conversation, Meredith, but it's certainly something that we can keep in mind and have conversation around the table when we get to the point where we're making decisions if you all have your ear to the ground and are aware that, XYZ agency got a huge PPP loan or something like that, that might make you feel like they're in less need than it might seem, we certainly can talk about that. Any other questions? Okay. Find my agenda, figure out what we're doing next. Okay, online reviews. We haven't got there yet. Let's look at the online reviews. We looked at the applications themselves, but the actual online portal, when you get logged in, this will be what you see. So I will only assign to you personally the grants that you are supposed to be reviewing. You won't see stuff that you can ignore. Everything that shows up in here in your inbox is what you need to be looking at. But you can see I assigned myself here 2 reviews, one Jelly Grant application from Prodeo and Lee Summit, and one community grant application from Boys and Girls Club. So in order to access the actual review itself, you see this red exclamation mark over here that says pending.
Could you share your screen?
Oh,
Not showing up yet.
sorry. Are you seeing it now? Thank you. I would have just been marching along showing you stuff without you being able to see. Oh, downfalls of online meetings. Okay, so you see over here, this red pending mark is where you actually go to access the review itself. So I'm going to click on that and enter into the evaluation for Boys and Girls Club. And this snazzy new little review portal allows us to do a side-by-side review. So you can see on the left here is your evaluation that you will be completing for the agency. And over here is the actual application. So you can scroll through the evaluation and make sure you understand what you need to be evaluating them on. And you can also scroll through the application itself and find out what they entered. So the application, will just take a brief look at what they entered here, so you're familiar with how it looks on the completed application side. The Boys and Girls Club of Greater Kansas City entered their website and their tax ID and their tax status. You see they uploaded their tax exemption letter, and the little eyeball view there allows you to see that, pops that up into a document viewer, so you can see they entered that document here. If you need, you can zoom in and zoom out. If they uploaded something that was upside down, you can rotate it with the tools here in the document viewer. Then their mission statement and history of the organization are text boxes that you can see, you can scroll through. Board list they updated, so we can view that. So that's real small. So we'll zoom in a bunch of times so you can see who these folks are. So that's the board list. And you can see over here on the right-hand side of the document viewer, everything that they uploaded into their application exists. So you can click through them one at a time here if you want. So here's the budget that they have uploaded, and their statement of financial position is here. So those are the documents that they uploaded into the application. You can always click up here as well to open that window. So the document viewer is part of the review process, but there are also questions here within the actual application itself that are of interest to you as well. So they're requesting $10,000 against $150,000 requested from other sources. They've classified their request as a health and human services request, serving children ages 5 to 13 and 14 to college age. Geographical area, they have identified only Independence. They did not upload anything about collaboration details, which is fine. They don't have to, but if they had one, it would be there. No interim or final report was uploaded. And you can see they selected program support. And so now we dive down into your program support questions. Their program is Smart Moves. They're hoping, for January through December start date. And here's the description of the program. In 100 words or less, this is where I always joke about this being kind of like the elevator speech about this program. Tell us briefly what this program is, and then what are the goals of the program? How will the funding be used? And like I mentioned, this is where they've got more space available to them. So you can see they did go into great detail about exactly how the funding for their proposal would be utilized. So that's great. And then program evaluation, they entered quite a bit of detail about that as well. Total program expenses, they uploaded the budget for the program, which we'll look at. So you can see they've identified the expenses as being $212,250 against $150,000 worth of revenues that they are that have been committed so far. And so that's the whole application. And so then here we'd come back over to the evaluation, and this asks you to just give an up or down vote on this. Do you like the proposal? Do you think it's something that should be funded? Yes or no? I'm going to click yes, because I think they do some good work. Suggested amount. This can be helpful for us when we are working around the table trying to figure out funding decisions. If there is a specific piece of the program that you think would be a good thing to fund, like, you know, if you look in their program budget and they've got a line item for $3,500 worth of supplies that they needed for this program, that might be something that you could make a note of here in the suggested amount category. And then for the rest of the questions, we utilize a 3-point scale. So 3 points is, I guess it's not spelled out in there. I need to make a note of that. I didn't notice that when I was reviewing the setup. Let me make a note really quick. I can't talk and think at the same time. I need to share with you what the scale means.
Great, Rachel.
Yes, go ahead.
Mike Larson, I wanted to ask a question about the sustainability also, but you kind of explained the 1, 2, 3 and sustainability, where 1 is not good, but 3 is good and stuff. So to me, it looks like this Boys and Girls Club thing would never be sustainable. They're always going to have to be asking money from somebody, but that's where you would take care of it there, that yes, it is a good program. Yes, we want to give money to them, but it's going to be something that is always going to need money from some outside source. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's exactly correct for that question. So we acknowledge, obviously, that the nonprofit world is sustained by donations and grants. And so we simply are just giving more points available here for those programs that wouldn't ever kind of slip into that we become a budget line item for them situation that we were just talking about in terms of the 3-year rule. So if it's just a one-time ask that, you know, something they just needed a piece of equipment, or they just needed a grant to launch a new program or something like that, that could be something that would receive 3 points versus something that is an ongoing program that would need ongoing fundraising associated with it would be 1 point. So there's nothing wrong with needing continued funding. It's just one of the ways by which we evaluate kind of the impact and success of a program. So I need to add the scale here into these questions. I'm sorry that didn't get added in the setup, but 3 points is obviously best. So how clearly does the proposal articulate the need, issue, population to be addressed? If you thought it was very clearly, you could give them 3 points. If you thought it was kind of pointed out, but you had some questions, you could give them 2 points. If you felt like the proposal didn't at all identify, you know, well, what the problem was or what they're trying to remedy through their programming, that would be a 1 point situation. Same thing here for the goals and evaluations. So with what they've entered to you about either their program or their organizational goals and evaluating procedures, do you feel like the goals and evaluation plans would lead to the goals or to the outcomes that they have proposed? That would be 3 points. If you thought, yes, very clear, obviously X plus Y is going to equal Z. If you thought, I'm not so sure that what they're proposing is really going to make the outcomes that they are claiming that it will, it might be a 2 point. If you're like, I'm definitely sure that this is not going to be successful in achieving the goals that they're outlaying, that would be a 1 point. So then we talked about the sustainability just a minute ago. And then here's another situation where again, there's nothing wrong with a proposal being housed and operated solely by the agency that's applying. We're just using the opportunity to give points for those organizations that seem to have good collaboration with others. You know, obviously there's a lot of overlap between programming between some agencies. And so, you know, if an agency gets together with another agency that's doing similar work to collaborate, we give them more points. So if they have a strong collaboration, 3 points. If they have a collaboration, but it seems kind of more just like that, you know, I wrote a nice letter about my friend's nonprofit program because he asked me to kind of collaboration, that might be 2 points. If there's no collaboration details at all, that would be 1 point. Okay.
Rachel, Mike Larson again, but before you move on, if I was applying for a grant for our citywide bus program and stuff, but the city is going to pay the balance out of Parks and Rec Department money and stuff, or Parks and Rec tax, is that a collaboration or is that something else?
I wouldn't think, just off the top of my head, I wouldn't think that would be a collaboration, since it's a city, it's an entity of your own organization that you would be partnering with. Does that make sense? Okay. And then any other questions before I continue? Feel free to unmute yourself and pipe up if you've got questions. I'm happy to take them at any time. And then return on investment. For the amount of funding that they have requested, what's the potential return on investment based on your review? If you think it would be a very big return on investment, very impactful grant, that could be 3 points. If you think, I don't know, seems a little middle of the road, you could give them 2 points. If you don't think that the grant would make a big impact based on what they're proposing, that would be 1 point. Okay. And then
that particular situation can be used if they have a proposal that's $150,000 budget and they're asking us for $5,000. It's not very impactful. Maybe they may deserve it, but it's not very impactful.
Right. And the other thing that comes up when we talk about the return on investment sometimes is numbers of people served. So if they're asking for $10,000 and it's only going to serve 10 people, that sometimes comes up when we talk about the impact of our investment, that, you know, some proposals serve broad swaths of people and some are much more specific. So just return on investment, keep those kind of details in mind. How much is being asked from other agencies, and how many people will be served, and all of that kind of stuff. Okay. So then you have the opportunity to leave some comments here as well, if you have anything specific that you want to bring up. Okay, so that is exactly the same in the other. This was a community grant application. I also did assign myself the Jelly grant application, which I'll show you briefly, but it's built exactly the same way. So the evaluation is the same and the application, the way it's presented here, is the same.
Rachel, in this particular one, would you say no and go through the process if you say no? Because it is the same, but it's really not quite the same.
In terms of if you enter the rest of the information after a no vote, is that what you mean?
If you write down no, then do you have to populate the suggested amount as 0?
So all of these fields are optional. I don't think that. So approve or yes or no. You see the asterisks here? This is a required field. So these questions are required. Suggested amount is not required. So if you don't have a particular thought about the funding level for that proposal, you don't have to enter that there. Comments are also not required. The points scoring is required. So to Cliff's question, even if you don't think that we should fund this proposal and you answer no, it still will require you to go through and give points because you may be the sole no vote of that proposal. So we still need to take your points values into account around the table as we average out everybody's reviews together to come up with a list of scoring at the end. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so that's the proposal, or I mean the review portal. Any questions about that process and how the technology works, or proposals from the nonprofits, or any questions?
In our previous program, had the ability to see what other people were writing about. Is that available on this one?
That's a good question. I'm not sure the answer to that. I will look into it.
And
I know that was sometimes helpful if you guys, while you guys were doing the reviews and you just wondered what other people's thoughts were, if they were noticing something strange in an application similar to what you were noticing, or I know that was helpful sometimes. So I don't know the answer to that with this new system, but I will look into it and let you know, okay?
And is all of the old stuff scrubbed out? So there's nothing stuck in there from previous years.
Right, yep. So the two systems do not speak to each other. So nothing got brought over from previous years. So this is all brand new, empty portal till I assign stuff to you. So. All right, well, so that's the overview of the portal. Okay, so we've talked about the grants programs, we've talked about the budgets, we talked about the online review, and we talked about program versus operating. So Lynette, I'll turn it back over to you to give an overview of our partners, our other agencies that we partner with, and our meeting schedule for the year.
Well, thank you. We do have two other groups that partner with us during the grants. And one of them is the Junior Service League. They will sit in on our review of the grants and listen to what we're thinking. And they take this information back and they will work with their committee, and then they will make their decisions based on what we've decided. And together we'll come up with decisions that will benefit the grantees. So if we decide that we don't want to award a grantee an application, the Junior League might say, no, that's something we're very interested, we'll take that one. So there's this negotiation and dialogue during some of our sessions with Junior League. They send one or two representatives to some of our meetings. Then we have the Youth Advisory Council, fondly known as the YAC group. And it's a wonderful group, and they sit in on our meetings and they choose some of the community grants and investigate the ones they're interested in. Then they come back and share with us what they found in their investigations. And they come back with some great information. And based on their information that they've found, we make decisions on based on what they've uncovered. So they're quite the super sleuths in investigations, and it's great to work with them. Their budgets are a lot smaller than ours, but they'll actually tell us which ones they're interested in. And sometimes we'll collaborate with them as well, and they'll add on to some of our select grantees. So it's a lot, it's a very, it's a great partnership with both groups, and it's very rewarding for all included. Our upcoming meeting agendas is attached to today's agenda. So our Jelly Grant decision meeting is our next meeting. It's April 16th. So everyone that is participating in the Jelly Grant selection, it's 9 a.m. through noon on Friday, April 16th. So that'll be our first Jelly decision-making meeting. And then our first community grants meeting, first cut, will be May 26th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then it goes into July, and the final community grants decision-making is September 1st. And then as Rachel mentioned earlier, the awards luncheon will be sometime in November. Hopefully we'll get to do it in person this year. Any questions?
Yeah, since I'm new to the grants, I had added every like Jelly grants and community grants, all of those to my calendar, but it sounds like I'd seen that slide earlier that said community grants next to my name. So I don't attend any of the Jelly grants, anythings.
Yeah.
right?
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
I can take
So
all
you
those
don't
out.
need to be the Jelly Grant April 16th meeting, but you do have to be to the May and July and September grant. Okay. So there's only one Jelly Grant meeting.
Yeah, so we've often just had a smaller pile of Jelly Grant applications, and so we're able to just take care of it in one pass. So the due date for those applications is the 16th, is Monday. So I will process them next week and get them assigned to you next week. And then we'll have a month to make the reviews of those. We've typically had about 30 applications, 35 applications in that group. So we'll have a month to look at those, and then the full board members and those from the advisory boards that are dedicated to the Jelly grants will come back together on April 16th to make our decisions about those funding priorities. And then simultaneously, the community grants applications are due March 26th. And so I will get those ready to go so that we are able to assign them as soon as possible after that. Unfortunately, that means our full board members sometimes get a little overloaded with community grants, but we have a bigger pile of community grants always, so I want to get them issued to you as soon as possible as well. So our first cuts meeting on May 26th is when we come back together after your reviews. I will tabulate all of that together for both committees, for both Jelly and community. I tabulate your reviews. I compile them all and tabulate into yes votes versus no votes totals, and then also average score. So, that 3-2-1 scale, I think there are five questions with 3 points available. So we look at the average score from you all, which usually ends up, being somewhere between 7 to 15 points, something like that. But then also looking at the numbers of no votes versus yes votes for each proposal. And so for community grants, our first cuts meeting is where we look at that list. And like I said, we've always just got a much more deep pile of applications for community grants. So we'll look at that tabulated list and just look at where we can draw a dividing line that, below 10 points, we just don't need to look at the rest of those applications down there because they've scored low and we've got 50 that are still above the line. So that's what we'll look at that first cuts meeting. And then from there, after that first cuts meeting happens is when I make the assignments to the Youth Advisory Council folks. So any proposals that are to do with supporting families or children are assigned to them. And they make their site visits over the summer during June and July. And so then on July 28th, we'll come back and have that meeting where they'll make their presentations to us about the proposals that they have reviewed as part of their work and learning about philanthropy and grant making and nonprofits. And then we'll come back on September 1st based on those conversations and make our final funding decisions and relate those proposals back to that budget and those funding sources that will match. Okay.
I had a question.
Yeah.
So if your organization may be applying for one of those grants, do you recuse yourself from that particular one or just go to another group?
Yes.
How does that work?
That's a great point as well. So if you have a conflict of interest as a board and advisory board member, every year we ask you all to sign our conflict of interest, our social media, and our confidentiality policy. And so our approach to conflicts of interest is that if you are an employee of or serving on the board of, or your spouse works at or serves on a board, to make that known by letting me know that you have a conflict with that particular proposal and then recusing yourself from that review. You don't need to recuse yourself from the whole process. It would just be from that particular proposal that you have the conflict with, okay?
All right, thanks.
Yep, so the big step is just to declare it. Just let me know and just recuse yourself. And that's, we know that you all are the type of people who serve on boards, right? And so we know that it's possible that you have a connection with one of these agencies that could be applying, and that's great. We want to have connections with people who know agencies who will apply, but we just manage that through just simple declaration and recusals. Any other questions?
Rachel, there's been times when we get grant applications from outside the area, St. Louis for one. Are you just going to scrub those out and not even put them in?
Unfortunately, I don't have the bandwidth. My little self is the grants department and the scholarships department and the youth advisory council department and the community initiatives department. And so I just don't have the bandwidth, unfortunately, to be doing that kind of initial review. That's the work that we require, that we rely on you guys for. And so if you see something that just doesn't seem to fit the criteria that we've talked about today that are posted on the website, just give it all 1 scores and say no, and that'll drop it down to the bottom of the list and we can cut it off, okay?
Sure.
Great. Any other questions? Very good questions, everybody. Okay, well, thank you all for hanging through. It ended up being a little bit longer today than I thought it would, but I appreciate you sticking with it. And please reach out to me if you have questions in the meantime, and I will be in touch with those of you that are serving on the Jelly Grants Committee sometime next week, hopefully to get those proposals sent out to you to get started on your work, okay?
Thank you all for coming.
Yes.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, thanks.